Welcome, everybody, to the first ever episode of Spotlight Series with Josh Shernoff here on Premier Streaming Network. I'm Josh Shernoff, and I am so excited to be able to bring you this brand new show. This is a show where when we have an opportunity to shine that spotlight on somebody special or something special, well, that's when they dust me off. I come out here and I conduct that interview, and man, do we have an interview for you today. We are talking all about Masters of Puppets, currently running for the next 2 weeks at the Legacy Theater in Branford, Connecticut. And I had the opportunity to see this past Friday. It was an excellent, excellent stage show that we are going to talk all about in a minute with my guest, the first guest ever on Spotlight Series. He's perhaps best known as Sean Spencer from the hit television series and subsequent movies Psych, and of course known as Gary Mendez from the ABC hit show A Million Little Things, which just wrapped up its fifth and final season. Please welcome the producer of Masters of Puppets, James Roday Rodriguez.
Josh, thanks for having me. You look well. You look crisp.
Thank you.
You look dignified.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm enjoying your mustache.
So am I, man. That makes two of us.
Nice, yeah.
You know, I was a child of the 80s, and mustaches had very different connotations and stigmas back then. It meant that you were cool,
Yeah.
and that you were, you know, like a firm, round-toed boot, or perhaps you were a private investigator in Hawaii, and these were all good things.
Nice. Well, you have some history as a private investigator.
I do, although I was never able to do it with my own mustache.
Oh.
So I guess I'm making up for lost time in a way.
Yeah. Well, hey, right off the bat, people are going to be angry if I don't ask. The next Psych movie, that's happening, right? It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Okay.
There certainly seems to be some momentum for it. Our fans are the best, and they always have an appetite for it. I'm sure you've heard the writers are currently on strike.
Yes.
I suspect the actors are going to be joining them shortly, so we're all on a bit of a forced vacation at the moment. But once that all clears itself up and the business opens up again, there is a script. It's with the right people. There's a process that we always have to go through in order to get one of these things made, and I think that process will begin in earnest once the strike is over. So
Awesome.
I think there's room for hope and cautious optimism.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you get to enjoy the mustache, so it's a win-win.
I don't know if you could tell, but I'm pointing directly at you, Josh, right now.
Pointing
right at your face.
Directly at me? Thank you.
That's what that is. If I do that again, that's what I'm doing.
Excellent.
You, man, that's what it means.
Right back at you. So let's talk about why we're actually here, though. Masters of Puppets. I had the opportunity to go on what I think was the official opening night this past Friday. I didn't know what to expect going into it. Obviously, lifelong wrestling fan myself. Also, I was a theater kid in high school. So looking at it, I'm like, hey, this is amazing. It was excellent. It was an excellent, excellent play. One of the things I wanted to ask you right off the bat was the inspiration behind it. Now, you were one of the producers. You were not the writer of it, but I wanted to know, what was the inspiration behind this project to bring this kind of behind the scenes of professional wrestling to the stage?
Well, like you, I was a fan from the time I was kindergarten probably. My dad was a fan. Watched a lot of wrestling growing up. It was sort of in our DNA, and then got away from it. As I got into high school and college, I sort of missed out on most of the Attitude Era, and then. Once I got Psych and I was on the USA Network, there was a lot of cross-promotional stuff with the WWE, and that's what put me back in wrestling's orbit, because I was meeting these men and women and being sort of fascinated by them,
Sure.
And learning to appreciate the art form in a new way, and I just had a ton more respect, knowing what they do to themselves. 300 nights a year. So I came out of hibernation and became like a full-fledged fan again. And somewhere in that in that little window, a good buddy of mine who I had gone to college with needed a gig, and I knew that a certain wrestling organization, I can't remember what it was called, needed writers, and so this person actually spent a few years writing for said organization, and came back with a wealth of experience, both on the road and not on the road, and said, I think I have to write about this. And I said, I think you should too. How are we going to craft this story? Like, what a fantastic backdrop. What a great world to play in. Let's make sure that it's not too, insider baseball. Let's make sure that anyone who comes to see this play can appreciate the themes that we're working with, maybe learn a little something they didn't know about professional wrestling, but never feel alienated.
Right.
And we were both, fans of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and he was like, what if we just sort of make it about the power dynamic of marriage? And it just so happens that this marriage is sort of at the top of a wrestling empire. And that was really where we started. And then the play changed a lot over the years, because this was a long development process. I would say close to a decade of just reordering things, reworking the story, taking stuff out, putting stuff back in. But what's truly fascinating to me in all of it is that a lot of the stuff that probably felt incredibly topical to you when it comes to where wrestling is, has been in the play for a while.
Right. We were talking about that on Friday.
Like well before that stuff started to happen, which, kind of makes me feel like the playwright is a bit of a soothsayer, that, you're able to sort of predict the future a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the truth is we're both wrestling fans, and it was never our intent to like, hey, let's dark side of the ring this industry. Let's go after this thing that we love. I would have done the same thing if I had produced a play about football, which is also a sport that is in my bones. It's something that interests me. There's my fandom is certainly baked into it. I kind of view this play as a love letter that just happens to be really bloody,
So one of the things that stood out to me with this was the cast. And as I was these were people that you have a ton of experience working with. These are friends of yours. They're in this cast. What was the process in that, getting this group of, I'd say, at least to a fan like myself, mainly TV actors? Some of the best TV actors, of course, started on the stage, and I want to talk to you about that in a minute too. But what was the process in casting this? And of course, a shout out to Kurt Fuller, who was my first time meeting him on Friday. Could not have been a nicer guy, and could not have played that part any better. But what was the process?
Yeah, Kurt's the best, and of course he was in No Holds Barred, so that was that one was a no-brainer. These are all actors. Well, I shouldn't say all. 4 of the actors in the play are fabulous performers with whom I have very deep and rich history, and I have either cast them in television shows that I was directing, or movies that I've done, or plays that I've produced. Because I had a theater company with another dude from NYU in Los Angeles for 20 years, and we produced quite a few plays, and Kurt was in 2 of them, and Amanda was in 3 of them, and Dana was in 1, and Michael Hogan, who played Rainy Days, has been in a bunch of TV stuff with me, and we went to college together. So I framed it as, hey, this is going to be like, drama camp. So go back to your teenage years, and it's going to be like a family reunion, and it's an intense 3-week rehearsal period, 3-week run. It's not going to cost you a ton of time. Let's all remember why we got into this and how much we love the theater. And you sort of, anytime you challenge an actor in that way, while they may resent you momentarily, they ultimately are like, man, you're twisting my arm to go do a play for not a lot of money, and then they get there, and of course, they have a blast, and they love the people that they're working with, and in this particular case, the fact that the WGA went on strike was even better because they couldn't be working on anything else anyway.
Right.
So we're all just sort of playing with house money, and it was great. A lot of those folks hadn't seen each other in a minute and got to catch up, and it was just basically me going through the old Rolodex and seeing who I could squeeze a little, stretch a little.
Well, it was great though, and the Rainy Days character as well was that was a phenomenal character. There was also this balance. I mean, this was kind of presented as a drama, but there was definitely a decent amount of comedy in there as well. Him in particular, but also Kurt's character as well there was a lot of comedy in there. So the balance.
Yeah, there's a ton of levity, and again, it's because the tagline in the play is that they put smiles on people's faces, and they do. Like that is a fact, and we in no way wanted to suggest that that's not true, which is why we felt like the play had to be as entertaining as going to see a live show. You should feel that way walking out, like you've been entertained, and that was sort of a huge box that we needed to check, regardless of the plotting of the play or what story we were telling. It was like, look, this play's about wrestling, and wrestling is fun, so the play's got to be fun.
So why the Legacy Theater in Connecticut? What's your attachment to them?
The artistic director of the Legacy is a woman named Keely Baisden, who I have known since I was 12 years old. We went to middle school together in San Antonio, Texas, and then high school. And then after she went off and I want to say like danced professionally for a while, she ended up landing at NYU. And so we actually did a couple years of college together too. So a lot of history there. The Legacy is her baby. It's her vision. She found an old sort of dilapidated theater in Stony Creek, Connecticut that had rich history, but had kind of they had let it go, and it was basically just a place where rock concerts happened, and said, I want to turn this into a theater again. I want to start making theater, and did a beautiful multi-million-dollar renovation, and the space is gorgeous, and now it's just time for people to realize what they've got on their hands in this community. So I think it was a mutually beneficial marriage for us of, developing a new play and needing a cool place to do it, and her having a cool place and wanting to put eyes on this theater. So it all kind of worked out, and it was great to collaborate with her again after all these years as well.
Do you think producing a play is kind of, obviously you're coming off of 5 years on A Million Little Things, a hugely successful show. Was this almost like kind of like I don't want to say a palate cleanser, but like almost like you had mentioned before, kind of going back to your roots, back to, high school or college or something. And was that kind of the idea of saying, hey, let's do it now? Did you decide, hey, let's do it now because the writers are on strike, now's the time, let's jump?
That was just fortuitous. We'd had this slot for almost a year because
Okay.
they programmed their seasons a year in advance. So we knew that this was the slot that we had, and I did it because I knew that I would at least be finished with A Million Little Things and could come and be some sort of presence. And absolutely, like, I love being in a theater. I miss being in a theater. My favorite thing is developing new plays. I mean, that's, I think, what I'm most passionate about is telling new stories and amplifying new voices, because there are plenty of people out there producing the plays that we know and love and have seen, dozens of times. But, new play development is just as important so that another generation can look back at the great shit that, we did.
Sure.
And it's just a different process, when the playwright is there and you're solving problems in the moment and you're rewriting on the go and you're making the play better and you're lifting up things and you're making things clear. It's just stuff that doesn't exist, when you're doing a play that's already been produced, and all you do, you have the rights to it and you can say the words, that's it. You can set it in McDonald's if you want, but there's really not a whole lot that you can do artistically to change the game. And with a new play, all bets are off. Special appearance by Claude the Mastiff there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's doing it. So yeah. For me, it's an absolute palate cleanser, man, and I need to do it more often. And that's something I say to myself at the beginning of every new year. Like you gotta figure out a way to do more theater, and the legacy could very well end up being the answer to that. I recently joined the board, and it's a great group of people who are really interested in finding that balance between, putting on shows that appeal to their subscription base, and then, making sure that we develop a new work every year. So as much as I can help them do that, I'm in.
That's really cool. You talked about the different processes. Any of your experience in television, does that help, or does that are there times when you're working on something for theater that you have to say, like, okay, no, that's my television brain, shut off, stop interfering? Is there stuff that I assume there's some stuff that kind of works for both, but what's that like for you?
It's a great question. The good news about TV is that you're basically on an assembly line, and you're churning these things out, in 7 or 8 days of pop. And, there are some times that you don't get the script until the night before you start shooting an episode, and you got to be light on your feet, and, you got to be able to adapt. So in that sense, there's not a lot of preciousness going on, when you're making television. And so, when it comes to theater, especially, developing a new play, the idea that kind of everything is in play, and nothing is sacred is very useful. You coming from television where, you might get new pages right before a scene, or you might see something that you thought was kind of cool get cut, before you ever even get to shoot it. Like, it's definitely a stay in the moment, be present kind of mentality, which I think helps when you're working on something new and on new material. I have primarily, like, when it comes to directing, at least, it's either been movies or TV for a while now. So I do think you start to think, very cinematically, like, what am I going to do with a camera, versus, okay, I'm in a proscenium theater. This is the fourth wall. People are only looking from one direction. And that is a different muscle for sure. It's also very tempting to, like, incorporate multimedia and use a bunch of tricks to make a play start to feel more like a movie. But the truth is, like, there are movies already. There are plenty of movies. You know where to go to see one, and theater offers a completely different experience. So, to your point, there are moments, especially when I'm directing theater, where I have to stop myself and say, no, that is my movie brain, and really challenge myself to solve things in a different way, than just making it feel, more like a movie.
Do you have any aspirations for you and, of course, the writer and the rest of the crew? You talked about the cast coming in. This was kind of a one-off, this 3-week run. And I should mention that there's still 2 more weekends of this show. So absolutely, yes, we'll make sure that all the information is out on our social media for people to find it. Because if you're anywhere within within a couple of hours, make the trip. Do you have any plans for the future outside of this initial run? Any plans for this to move on to a different theater or continue at Legacy?
That's the hope. And by the way, before I even go forward, I should make crystal clear, I did not direct this play either. It was directed brilliantly by Gabe McKinley, who's another NYU alum that I've known for a very long time, who I brought in knowing that he had a base appreciation for wrestling, but nothing to the extent that the playwright and I had. And so he was a fresh pair of eyes, and he brought a whole different set of ideas to it. And I thought he did a great job in a very short period of time in a very specific space, because it's a big play, especially on paper, and to sit in that theater and go, all right, there's 6 or 7 locations throughout Madison Square Garden, and 6 actors, and wrestling, and flashbacks. Like, how are we going to do this? I thought he was economical, and I thought it was very, very sharply directed. So I want to give props to Gabe.
I also want to say, if I could give props to whoever designed the set, the way that maneuvered throughout the play was incredible. The thought that went into that. So I just want to say that was something that jumped out to me. That was excellent as well.
Yeah, that was Jamie, who also is the light designer. He wears many hats for the Legacy Theater and did a fantastic job, as did Gali, who designed the costumes. It's a slick looking show. Definitely proud of how the show looks, for sure. And to answer your question, the idea is to find perhaps someplace else to move the show. Maybe with a little bit more of a budget and a little bit of a longer run, whether that be in New York City or a really nice, regional space, maybe Los Angeles. We do have a publicist, and we are putting out feelers, and that's something else that I think it would be great to tap into for the Legacy Theater as a place where new works are developed and then sort of go off into the world, always remembering where they started. I think that would be a sort of a great way for the Legacy to put themselves on the map as well.
Well, before I let you go, I know you are a busy man. I really do appreciate you taking the time here. I could talk to you for hours. Obviously, I'm a longtime fan of Psych, Million Little Things, all of your work. So it was really cool to be able to see something that was more of a passion project for you, to be able to see that and go. But one question I need to ask you about professional wrestling.
Yes, let's do it.
All time. Favorite wrestler, favorite match.
All right.
I put you on the spot here.
You did, but I feel like this is a fluid question, and if you asked me 10 times, I would probably come up with 10 different answers. But
that's fair.
But what I can give you is today's answer. All time. And this could be broken into two parts, as you know. You could be asking me, who's your favorite personality, who's the best talker, who's the best worker. It's tough.
It's a complicated question, yeah.
I think the top person on each of those lists, quite frankly, are different. Okay. Like, I don't know that there is one person that you could say is the best talker, the best worker. Like, I think from when I was a kid, and it was like going to the circus, and you had no idea how the sausage was made, I would probably have to go with Piper.
Okay.
Because he managed to be a heel that you also couldn't not laugh at and be entertained by. Like, he was aces on the mic. And then he would get in the ring, and at least for me, usually, like, I would always get surprised. Like, Roddy can actually work a little too. Like, that wasn't what he was known for.
Right.
But, he could get in there and show some color and take some abuse. And he had some pretty big matches in the 80s. So I think I would say for that era of me, I would go with Roddy Piper. And then for adult me being reintroduced into the wrestling landscape, I don't know I've seen anybody do it better than Shawn Michaels. I don't think I've seen anybody do it like he did it.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of arguments with those answers.
Yeah, I mean, not the best talker, but certainly good enough to go along with what he could do in a wrestling ring. The way he could sell for anybody, pretty phenomenal, and fun to watch, and a San Antonio dude. And then I would be remiss if I didn't give shout outs to the royal couple of wrestling, Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins, because I think they're both crushing it in this very moment in time.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. That was very detailed.
Favorite match.
Okay, favorite match. I was going to let you go. I was going to let you slide on that, but okay.
Because some of us actually know the story behind it, I always go back to Bret Hart, Davey Boy Smith in the UK.
92, SummerSlam, yeah.
where Davey got to take the title in front of his hometown fans. But the narrative and the legend behind that match, which is that Brett was having to call every second of it because Davey Boy was blasted,
Yep.
could barely knew what was going on. It just makes you appreciate it like on such a different level of like, wow, what a technician, what a craftsman to be able to have us all believing that this was one of the best matches that we've ever seen when one of the two competitors was like lights out. Unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
props to Bret Hart.
Yeah, Bret Hart's my personal favorite of all time. So I'm with you on that. I think he was incredible, underrated if that's possible. But yeah,
I think he is underrated, and I think the reason he's underrated is because he was never, because of when he left, he was never the guy, right? He was never The Rock or Stone Cold or Hogan. Like, he got very close to the top of the mountain, and then his problems with Vince is sort of what prevented him from actually being that person who had a full reign, which I think would have bumped him up on a lot of lists. And then, he wasn't a big talker, man. He just wasn't.
Yeah. No, he really wasn't. But he entertained in the ring. That was,
Hell yeah, he did.
But
hell yeah, he did. For anyone who hasn't seen that match in a while, like,
go check it out.
Go back and watch it, like knowing that Davey Boy Smith kind of showed up, not knowing where he was, and appreciated it in a whole new way.
And now, while we're here on Premier Streaming Network, I will say go watch it on Peacock because you can also watch those Psych movies and Psych in general on Peacock. So, hey, let's spread the love there.
Shopping, Josh.
Yep.
Well
hey,
said.
thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really enjoyed the show. Masters of Puppets at Legacy Theater. We have 2 more weeks, so go check it out. We'll have all the information in our social media. James Roday Rodriguez, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for caring, Josh. Really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, James, for taking the time to join me here on the first episode of Spotlight Series. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope that you will go, if you are anywhere in the area of Connecticut, go and check out the Legacy Theater Masters of Puppets. I have a feeling it's going to be coming to a place near you soon enough. It was excellent. For James Roday Rodriguez, I am Josh Shernoff, and this is Spotlight Series. We'll see you again next time on Premier Streaming Network.